Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity.
A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connections, and without a university education, moved to London in the late 1580s, and, in a remarkably short time, became the greatest playwright not of his age alone, but of all time. How was this achievement of magnitude made? How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare?
Tesla actually worked for Edison early in his career. Edison offered to pay him the modern equivalent of $1 million to fix the problems he was having with his DC generators and motors. Tesla fixed Edison's machines, and when he asked for the money he was promised, Edison laughed him off and had this to say, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor."
Yellow is considered as the most optimistic color. Yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms, and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color for eyes to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused.
Akimbo, this must be one of the odder-looking words in the language and puzzles us, in part because it doesn't seem to have any relatives. What's more, it is now virtually a fossil word, until recently almost invariably found in arms. Akimbo, a posture in which a person stands with hands on hips and elbows sharply bent outward, one signaling impatience, hostility, or contempt.
Domestication is an evolutionary rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs, and yes, their flesh.
The Grand Canyon is 277 miles long, up to 18 miles wide, and attains a depth of over a mile. While the specific geologic processes and timing that formed the Grand Canyon are the subject of debate by geologists, recent evidence suggests the Colorado River established its course through the canyon at least 17 million years ago.
The situation is similar to a pregnant woman that has twin babies in her belly, says Avi Loeb of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He's proposing the idea in a paper that's been accepted for publication in the Astrophysical Journal Letters.
Moods may also have an effect on how information is processed, by influencing the extent to which judges rely on pre-existing, internal information, or focus on new, external information. Positive moods promote more holistic and top-down processing style, while negative moods recruit more stimulus-driven and bottom-up processing.
The problem begins with the alphabet itself. Building a spelling system for English using letters that come from Latin, despite the two languages not sharing exactly the same set of sounds, is like building a playroom using an IKEA office set.
Modern buildings have to achieve certain performance requirements, at least to satisfy those of building codes, to provide a safe, healthy, and comfortable environment. However, these conditioned environments demand resources in energy and materials, which are both limited in supply, to build and operate.
The numbers on U.S. student debt, after all, are truly staggering. The average 2015 U.S. university graduate who took out loans to help pay for tuition enters the workforce with $35,000 in student debt. In the U.S., total student debt exceeds $1.15 trillion, dwarfing, for instance, the nation's credit card debt. Who do you think is the most glamorous person? A biotechnologist who led his company in international research, an ordinary welder who gained international fame through his work, or a photographer complimented widely for a series of photos?
Trade unions originated in Europe during the Industrial Revolution. Because of the machinery that had become commonplace, skilled labor became less in demand, so employers had nearly all of the bargaining power. Employers mistreated the workers and paid them too little for the work they did. Trade unions were organized that would help in the improvement of working condition.
Many papers you write in college will require you to include quotes from one or more sources. Even if you don't have to do it, integrating a few quotes into your writing can add life and persuasiveness to your arguments. The key is to use quotes to support a point you're trying to make, rather than just include them to fill space.
The caterpillars that feed on trees are trying to match the hatching of their eggs to the timing of bud burst. The caterpillars want to feed on the juiciest and least chemically protected leaves. And it's not just the caterpillars, of course, that are important, but the knock-on effect is on nesting birds, which are also trying to hatch their chicks at the same time that there's the maximum number of caterpillars.
Roman writers and orators began to expand their imaginative and intellectual horizons and refine the Latin language through the study of Greek literature. Early Roman literature had two kinds: the recording and examination of public life and behavior through life stories of famous men, and the particularly Roman art of satirical comedy and drama.
The Ford Company provides plenty of opportunities for its employees. It guarantees not only comfortable and appropriate working conditions, but also many other advantages. Therefore, becoming a part of the Ford Motor Company is always profitable and beneficial. Moreover, it is important to mention that Ford Motors provides its employees with effective and useful services and takes care of their well-being. We've outfitted it with the Space Lab built by our European partners and used it before the era of the space station to do scientific research. We used it as part of our partnership with the Russians, which is still continuing, first as part of the Mir space station, where we actually prolonged the useful life of Mir by several years through logistical supply visits with the shuttle. And now, of course, we're using it to build the new International Space Station, which is a huge international partnership.
While killing gorillas is already illegal in the country, declaring the subspecies as critically endangered would probably bring more funding and support for saving it. Protecting the entirety of the gorilla's 7,700 square mile territory would no doubt prove impossible. But Dr. Plumtree and his colleagues are talking with the government and community leaders about establishing 2 new protected areas that would encompass 60% of the remaining gorilla's habitat.
With revenue from college football at an unprecedented $3.4 billion annually, universities across the country invest millions each year in recruitment efforts for high school football players, but with talented players typically receiving multiple scholarship offers. Team rosters are in limbo until student athletes commit to a university.
Mandarin learning has grown in popularity in the United Kingdom in the wake of the British government acknowledging the importance of China as a key partner after the nation leaves the European Union. Earlier this month, the Foreign Office hosted a special celebration Mandarin lesson involving 140 British pupils from 14 secondary schools to show the Chinese government the significant progress British people have made in learning the language.
Nurse sharks are thought to take advantage of dormant fish, which would otherwise be too fast for the sharks to catch. Although their small mouths limit the size of prey items, the sharks have large throat cavities which are used as a sort of bellows valve. In this way, nurse sharks are able to suck in their prey. Nurse sharks are also known to graze algae and coral.
Scientists have determined that the atmosphere above the planet Uranus is full of a gas that makes the distant planet smell like rotten eggs. According to NASA, a global research team dissected infrared light from Uranus and found hydrogen sulfide in the planet's top clouds. Hydrogen sulfide is a colorless, flammable, extremely hazardous gas with a rotten egg smell, according to the Occupational Health and Safety Administration.
Studying abroad is a very popular option for students who come from a wealthy family. Most people believe that overseas experience provides a deeper understanding of cultures and develops communication skills. While this may be true, not all of these new experiences are useful for finding a job. Employers tend to value interpersonal skills and industry knowledge more than cultural background.
Surprisingly, despite what appear to be infinite variations, all difficult conversations share a common structure. When you're caught up in the details and anxiety of a particularly difficult conversation, this structure is hard to see. But understanding that structure is essential to improve how you handle your most challenging conversations.
First-year university students have designed and built a groundbreaking electric car that recharges itself. 50 students from the Faculty of Engineering spent 5 months cobbling together bits of plywood, foam, and fiberglass to build the concept car. They developed the specifications and built the car. It's a pretty radical design, a four-wheel drive with a motor in each wheel.
Researchers have found that divorce has different kinds of negative impacts on the planet, including higher demand for resources and a lower rate of efficiency in the use of household resources. People have been talking about how to protect the environment and combat climate change, but divorce is an overlooked factor that needs to be considered.
Although introvert and extrovert personality types differ from one another on various grounds, the major difference between the two is their source of rejuvenation. While for extroverts this may mean interaction or excursions with friends and family, the same may mean reading a book or listening to music for introverts.
Most peasants remained self-sufficient and skeptical about money, and with good reason. The triumph of capitalism probably made them worse off. They now had to deal with a centralized imperial state that was collecting tax more efficiently, giving more power to landlords, and slowly reducing customary peasant rights to land and produce.
Another method governments use to try and influence the private sector is economic planning. For a long time now, socialist and communist states have used planning as an alternative to the price mechanism, organizing production and distributing their resources according to social and strategic needs, rather than based on purely economic considerations.
Most succulent plants are found in regions where there is little rainfall, dry air, plenty of sunshine, porous soils, and high temperatures during part of the year. These conditions have caused changes in plant structures, which have resulted in greatly increased thickness of stems, leaves, and sometimes roots, enabling them to store moisture from the infrequent rains.
Global water consumption has increased almost fourfold in the past 100 years, and many regions can only meet their water demand thanks to essential contributions from mountain regions. In 30 years, almost a quarter of the world's lowland population will strongly depend on runoff from the mountains. Only sustainable development can ensure the important function of mountain areas as Earth's water towers.
The global collapse of frogs and other amphibians due to the amphibian chytrid fungus exacerbated malaria outbreaks in Costa Rica and Panama during the 1990s and 2000s, according to new research. The findings provide the first evidence that amphibian population declines have directly affected human health and show how preserving biodiversity can benefit humans as well as local ecosystems.
Compared to chimpanzees, our closest evolutionary cousins, humans, are particularly prone to developing advanced carcinomas, the type of tumors that include prostate, breast, lung, and colorectal cancers, even in the absence of known risk factors, such as genetic predisposition or tobacco use. A recent study helps explain why. European wildcats, thought to be extinct 50 or so years ago in the Jura Mountains, have since recolonized part of their former territory. This resurgence in an area occupied by domestic cats has gone hand in hand with genetic crosses between the two species. A team of biologists modeled the interactions between the two species to predict that hybridization will entail the irreversible genetic replacement of wild cats.
Participating regularly in physical activity has been shown to benefit an individual's health and well-being. Regular physical activity is important in reducing the risk of chronic diseases, such as heart disease and stroke, obesity, diabetes, and some forms of cancer. The National Physical Activity Guidelines for Adults recommends at least 30 minutes of moderate-intensity physical activity, preferably every day of the week, to obtain health benefits. A ubiquitous neurotransmitter that carries signals between brain cells, dopamine, among its many functions, is involved in multiple aspects of cognitive processing. The chemical messenger has been extensively studied from the perspective of external cues, or deterministic signals. An economic depression is a period of sustained, long-term downturn in economic activity in one or more economies. It is more severe than a recession, which is a slowdown in economic activity over the course of a normal business cycle. Economic depressions are characterized by their length and by abnormally large increases in unemployment rate.
Finally, the experimenters examined real insects. To see if leg adhesion might also play a role in the walking coordination of real flies, they put polymer drops on the flies' legs to cover their claws and adhesive pads, as if the flies were wearing boots, and watched what happened. The flies quickly began to use bipod-like leg coordination similar to the one discovered in the simulation.
Bioperturbation, the disturbance of soils by animals, is an important and often essential functional component of many ecosystems worldwide. It determines the spatio-temporal characteristics of soil patches and thereby contributes to the ecosystem's diversity and heterogeneity.
Hunters of extraterrestrial life may want to listen particularly closely for signals originating at star systems within that narrow band of galactic sky. Advanced civilizations there may have already detected us using the transit method, they say, and may now be sending us a message. You might think of this paper then like a treasure map for intelligent life.
A student exchange program complements formal education while promoting tolerance, maturity, and independence, all highly sought-after qualities in today's competitive job market. Living in the host country, not as a tourist or guest, but as a member of the community, is what makes the experience both challenging and rewarding.
A microbe can either reproduce by dividing or it can conserve its energy and maintain only its most basic functions. One possibility is that in the unfavorable conditions under the South Pacific floor, the microbes could have been dividing very slowly over centuries. In this case, the microbes in the study may be the descendants of an even more distant past.
In 1953, Skinner visited his daughter's maths class. The Harvard psychologist found every pupil learning the same topic in the same way at the same speed. A few days later, he built his first teaching machine, which let children tackle questions at their own pace. By the mid-1960s, similar gizmos were being flogged by door-to-door salesmen. Within a few years, though, enthusiasm for them had fizzled out.
The Earth just had the hottest month in recorded history, and it's even worse than normal. The record comes in a run of unprecedentedly hot months. Not only does it break through the all-time record set a year before, it also continues a now 10-month-long streak of months that are the hottest ever according to NASA data. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration calculates temperatures slightly different.
Termites, the tiny creatures, have learnt to create a comfortable home in some of the world's toughest climates. Outside, in the African savanna, the temperatures vary from 40 degrees in the day to 1 degree at night. Yet, inside the mound, the temperature stays constant.
The question is asked, how is understanding possible? The technique for thinking of this approach is that while Scripture is something past a standard substance, Scripture is in the principal examination content, which individuals endeavor to appreciate. In this sense, the benchmarks of seeing any substance applied to the Bible additionally paying little regard to whatever other additional, especially philosophical gauges are considered.
Children as young as 14 months old will spontaneously help others for no reward. But a study of 3 to 5-year-olds found that, although they would spontaneously draw pictures, if they were given a reward for drawing pictures, then later they wouldn't make any drawings unless a reward was offered. At an early stage in the examination of the domicile of dependency rule, insofar as it related to married women, it seemed to the Commission that it would be better to examine the whole concept of domicile, particularly as dependent domicile arises in the case of minors, children under the age of majority, and mentally disordered persons, as well as in the case of married women.